Hello, my name is Sophie MacDonald, and this is my final project for art history. For the final project, I have created this video lecture to analyze iconoclastic controversy, most notably during the Byzantine Empire. However, iconoclasm was not essentialized to this period. From early civilizations to modernity, the destruction of artworks remains a long-standing practice. As seen in this slide, this lecture will cover works from Akkadian, Roman, and Byzantine empires, as well as an active iconoclasm in Afghanistan just 22 years ago. All citations and image references will be provided on a separate document. This video lecture seeks to define iconoclasm and its emergence as a form of cultural, religious, and/or political expression. When discussing the emergence of iconoclasm, the iconoclast-iconophile controversy within the Byzantine Empire will be prioritized. Using a variety of academic sources to inform this analysis, the video will examine examples of iconoclasm throughout pre-modern and contemporary periods. To what extent did iconoclasm impact cultural, religious, and political dynamics within pre-modern and modern societies? What are the short-term and long-term consequences of iconoclastic controversy? I will begin by prefacing, what is iconoclasm? According to Elsner, the term iconoclasm has embraced varying definitions over time. Initially, it was associated with a turbulent period during the reign of Leo III and Constantine V in the Byzantine Empire. Over time, it has evolved to encompass any destructive action toward an image or artwork. There is another definition provided by Elsner that I feel truly captures the internal logic of iconoclasm and its perpetrators. Quote, that is, the political and public announcement of condemnation of enemies, and simultaneously the assertion of identity by the destroyer. As iconoclasm is a declaration of violence toward an enemy, for example iconophiles, it also clarifies the core beliefs of the perpetrators. In an act of defiance, iconoclasts draw immediate attention to the cause by the defacement of an image, cementing their position on a given issue and weakening the opposition. This definition is applicable to all iconoclastic movements, no matter the period. Here is a slide to the right that I thought would be helpful to include, as I will be using these terms throughout the rest of the video. To understand how iconoclasm impacted Byzantine societies and the long-term consequences of this movement, I will provide one of many theories on its origins. To quote the Second Commandment, "Thou shalt not make for yourself a graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth." This passage is fundamental to iconoclasm within the empire. Iconophiles were determined to preserve faithfulness in communities through imagery. On the other side of this argument, iconoclasts protested the use of religious imagery as a direct violation of the Second Commandment. Leo III strategically sided with the iconoclasts and was the first emperor to champion iconoclastic movements. The use of iconography was debated at length by the papacy and emperors, but it was ultimately banned in 730 under Leo III. As a highly systematized movement, strict legal codes and enforcement aimed at the destruction of sacrilegious imagery proved to be highly efficient. By sanctioning these acts, the regime under Leo III and Constantine V sought to name the enemy while announcing themselves and their causes as divinely approved. Under both Leo III and his son Constantine V greatly dissuaded the use of iconography in the empire while legitimizing their divine right to rule. There were two distinct shifts in public attitudes before and during iconoclastic movements. Prior to iconoclastic dominance, idols were revered and regarded as protectors from evildoers. Unfortunately for Leo III, idols could not protect him from the issues that the empire faced. The Byzantine Empire was significantly weakened by internal and external calamities during Leo III's ascent to rule. Prefects of Leo III scrambled to distract citizens from the empire's maladies. Fault landed upon idol worshippers for the empire's misfortunes, but why the idol worshippers and not another enemy? Up until this point, idol worshipping was tolerated by Leo III. So what changed? Llewellyn-Ilsen answers this complex question promptly. Threats to the population are equivalent to threats to the sovereign. Demonizing a group within the state alleviates the pressure on the government when dealing with national crises. As the empire continued its descent into chaos, redemption from its demise appeared to be the idolatry question. Here is Leo III's coin to the right of the slide. Once edicts against idolatry were introduced by Leo III, temperatures began to shift. Society became less tolerant towards depictions of religious figures such as saints, and sanctified images brutalized by human interpretation. The confiscation of idols was encouraged during Leo's reign. It wasn't until his son, Constantine V, ascended to the throne that the destruction of idols and iconophiles accelerated. Described as a period of theological radicalism, Constantine V furthered the persecution of iconophiles, including iconophile clergymen. Scholars remain skeptical regarding claims of terror and violence against these groups, but Constantine V's policies on iconography were undoubtedly repressive. Here is Constantine V's coin to the right of the screen. To distract from the shortcomings of the regime, Leo III demonized iconophiles and forms of religious imagery in the Byzantine Empire. These edicts shaped the works created at this time, as they were restricted to the usages of the cross. Constantine V took it a step further by persecuting monastic iconophiles. Despite little information on the actual killings of iconophiles, art and other expressions of religious life came under fire in the iconoclastic period of the Byzantine Empire. A great deal of mosaics, portraits, and other mediums were destroyed in churches across the empire. Some examples are depicted in Rayback's article of extensive damage to mosaics in both churches and synagogues. Here to your right is a page from the Shuldov Psalter depicting iconoclast John the Grammarian washing an image of Christ. As this piece was painted later in the 9th century, it criticizes iconoclasts. With Jesus' crucifixion at the foreground, the artist is comparing the heretical acts of Byzantine iconoclasts to the murderers of Christ. This piece reflects how the pendulum swung from intolerance to acceptance once again of these religious expressions. As I mentioned previously, iconoclasm was not an isolated instance in the Byzantine Empire. To the right of the screen, this is an image of the head of man, known as Akkadian ruler, currently held in the National Museum of Iraq. The head of man is a regal, naturalistic copper bust. This identified king's solemn expression is attributed to his status as an authoritative figure. The detailed line work within the beard and braided headband frames the face, adding to the sternness of his expression. However, the gashes on his ears and eyes may distract the viewer from the intricacies of this piece. Historians posit that the gashes are attributed to an act of iconoclasm, perhaps inspired by political motives. This haunting image displays some of the damage to the bust around the eyes. I have to admit I struggle to find academic sources on this iconoclastic background of this piece, but I can imagine that the perpetrators not only disagreed with the ruler's politics, but sought to humiliate this king by removing select features from the bust. This created dual functions for the piece. The first, a tribute to a ruler, and second, the metaphorical vote of no confidence by groups, which in turn undermines the ruler's legacy. Jumping over to the Roman Empire, the image to the right is of the Severan Tondo. This family portrait has an unmistakable missing face. The face belongs to Septimus Severus's younger son, Geta, who was murdered by his older brother, Caracalla. The wooden panel had been purposefully damaged, an act referred to as damnatio memoriae. Hackworth-Peterson defines damnatio memoriae as, quote, a decree to condemn an individual to oblivion, meant eradicating his or her images and inscriptions as if he or she had never existed. Iconoclasm is typically the target of religious or cultural works for political reasons. while damnatio memoriae targets individuals who have fallen out of favor with authority, erasing them from any images or descriptions. When comparing damnatio memoriae and iconoclasm, both acts seek to destroy imagery for cultural, political, or religious motivations, resulting in the loss of cultural heritage and historical sources. And lastly, two colossal Buddhas watched over the Bamiyan Valley in Afghanistan for over 2 millennia, until early March 2001. Taliban jihadists strategically planned to attack these reliefs and send shockwaves across the world. What is not commonly recognized is that these statues have been conductors of iconoclasm long before the Taliban regime. Why have these figures been repeatedly victimized by iconoclasm? The demarcation of idols continues to signal shifting religious and political peripheries in Islamic nations. This impactful form of communication solidified the perpetrator's stance on Buddhism while invoking an emotional reaction from viewers across the world. These iconoclastic edicts also asserted the hypocrisy of Western nations. While Afghanistan citizens faced famine, the international community refused to provide aid. Iconoclastic acts in both pre-modern and modern societies identify an enemy while reifying the group's core beliefs and targets. Over thousands of years, iconoclasm continues to alter political, cultural, and religious dimensions of pre-modern and modern societies. Whether driven by religious or political shifts, the desecration of imagery divides the meaning of the work. Its original intent or message is overshadowed by its newfound status as a mechanism within a larger iconoclastic narrative. The destruction of religious icons, like a god or a saint, polarizes both iconoclasts and iconophiles. In the short term, iconoclastic acts are the result of building tensions across political and religious circles. Years later, these acts create holes in historical sources, leaving art historians with fragmented timelines and diminished cultural heritages. Thank you.